Why was Operation Rolling Thunder ineffective in Vietnam? Imagine launching a massive bombing campaign with high hopes of forcing an enemy to surrender, only to find that it doesn't quite work out that way. That's what happened with Operation Rolling Thunder. This was a large-scale bombing effort by the United States during the Vietnam War, aimed at pressuring North Vietnam to stop supporting the insurgency in South Vietnam. But despite the effort and resources poured into it, the campaign didn't deliver the results the U.S. wanted. Several key reasons explain why. First, political and military restrictions played a big role. The U.S. government limited the targets for bombing to avoid provoking China or the Soviet Union into direct conflict. Areas near Han, Haiphong, and the Chinese border were off-limits. This meant the North could keep vital infrastructure and supply routes intact, which made the bombing less effective. The cautious approach was meant to prevent escalation but also limited the campaign's impact. Second, the strategy of gradual escalation slowed down the bombing. The idea was to increase pressure over time, but this gave North Vietnam time to adapt. They developed sophisticated defenses like radar-controlled anti-aircraft guns, which shot down many American planes. The slow buildup also meant the psychological impact was weaker. Instead of breaking their will, the bombing often just hardened their resolve. Third, the U.S. air power doctrine was based on the idea that bombing an industrialized enemy would cripple their war effort. But North Vietnam was mostly an agricultural society with limited factories. Their economy and military supply lines weren't as vulnerable to strategic bombing as the U.S. had assumed. Plus, they relied heavily on support from China and the Soviet Union, which kept their war effort alive despite the bombing. Fourth, the campaign failed to stop the flow of supplies along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. North Vietnamese troops used camouflage, quick repairs, and dispersed logistics to keep their supplies moving. No matter how many bombs fell, they found ways to keep their supply lines open. This meant the flow of reinforcements and weapons continued, undermining the entire purpose of the bombing. Fifth, the political effects of the bombing turned counterproductive. The bombing caused civilian casualties and destruction, which increased anti-American feelings both in Vietnam and around the world. Instead of weakening North Vietnamese support, it often strengthened their resolve and boosted the morale of the Viet Cong in the South. Finally, the focus of the campaign shifted from strategic effectiveness to simply flying more missions and dropping more bombs. Leaders measured success by sortie rates rather than actual results on the ground. This approach ignored the fact that the bombing wasn't achieving its main goals. In the end, Operation Rolling Thunder didn't succeed because political limits, misjudged strategies, and enemy resilience combined to make it ineffective. The North Vietnamese adapted quickly, kept their supply routes open, and used the destruction to rally support for their cause. Meanwhile, the U.S. air power was hampered by restrictions and a flawed understanding of the enemy's capabilities. That's why the campaign failed to bring about the decisive victory the U.S. had hoped for.